This is an episode you can play in school, and it's an interesting one. Welcome back to... One second. Where I take a look at old text that might be a little hard for the modern reader and listener to understand and explain it. Today, it's Shakespeare. It's Shakespeare. It's never anything but Shakespeare. It's Shakespeare. Before we start, I just want to say, some people in the comments have been acknowledging that my eyes don't look at the camera in my videos, and they think I'm, like, reading something. I'm not. I wanted to address that really quickly. It's actually... Hold on. Sonnet 130. Why Sonnet 130? I love this poem because it is very polarizing, meaning that when people read this, they will take away very different interpretations, and they feel very strongly about those interpretations, which makes discussing this poem really fun. Also, fun fact, on YouTube, there are 2 separate readings of this poem by Daniel Radcliffe and Alan Rickman. It's weird, right? But before we can debate and discuss a poem, we have to understand it. Now, I want you to get your own interpretation of this poem that is different from mine. So, through my first explanation, I'm only going to talk about what the words mean. I am not going to go into my interpretation until afterwards. Here we go. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. So, I want you to think of every mushy poem that you've ever heard in your life. What do they say about the person's eyes? That there are lights in their eyes, that it lights up like the night sky or like the sun, stars. You see light and life in somebody's eyes, and he's saying, my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. There's the sun and there's my mistress' eyes. There's a clear difference. Coral is far more red than her lips red. People always say that her lips were a deep red, a nice saturated red. And he says that coral is far more red than her lips are red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hair be wires, black wires grow on her head. If snow be white, then her breasts are done. So you always talk about when somebody is white, you talk about how fair their skin is, how pale their skin is. In the same way, if you were describing someone who's black, in the same kind of manner, it would be how deep and glowing their skin is, rather than how pale and white it would be, I just realized I didn't explain what dun meant. Dun is a color that is very grayish. It's very almost like a tarnished white. A good example would be the day after snow falls, as it were. You know how snow has been on the ground for a while, and people and animals and traffic have had their way with it already, and it gets that like grayish brown, very dirty, unpleasant color. That is dun. So if snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. So he's clearly writing about a white woman, and he says that her skin is not as white as snow is, and if hair be wires, black wires grow on her head. Now, there's nothing wrong with having black hair. That might be the first thing that you think when you hear this line, but think about what you get in your mind when you hear black wires. If you can picture something in your mind, black wires. It's usually not something that is, beautiful or looks like hair. Even more so, think about what somebody 400 years ago in the Renaissance thought when they heard black wires. It doesn't look like hair, it doesn't look like something that you would want on a person. Black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. I have seen roses damasked red and white. In this context, damasked means in patterns of, or patterned of. I have seen roses in patterns of red and white. I have seen roses patterned red and white. But no such roses see I in her cheeks. We've all heard the line, she has rosy cheeks, right? He's saying, I don't see roses in her cheek. There are roses. Those are red roses, those are white roses, and those are her cheeks. They are very different colors. And in some perfumes, there is more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. He's saying there are perfumes in the world that are far more pleasant than the breath that comes from my mistress. Now, this is the part where a lot of people in the poem are starting to have really strong opinions about the meaning. And I want you to hold on to those because we're going to get to that at the end, but just hang on. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. He's saying, I love the voice of my mistress. I love it when she talks, but music is more pleasant. Music is nice to listen to. Her voice is not as... Her voice can't compare to music. I grant, I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. Again, think about mushy love poems, that she moves with the grace of the gods. She levitates. She almost seems to float. She's so graceful and beautiful. He's saying, no, my mistress is a woman who walks on her feet like an adult. So this has been 12 lines of Shakespeare basically saying, your cheeks are not roses, your eyes are not lights, your movements are not divine, you are none of these, like, grand poetic things that we often hear people say. But the last 2 lines are the most pregnant in this poem. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as fair as any she belied, with false compare. By heaven, I swear to God, I swear to whatever God you want me to, I swear to heaven that my love is as rare. My love is still as unique and pure and true and sincere as any she belied with false compare, as any man or woman who came before me, who fed her these lines falsely, who told her that her cheeks were roses, that told her that her hair was not black wires, who told her that her skin was as fair as snow. These people who lied to her, I say my love is just as pure and true as theirs was. Now, if you're in a room full of people like a classroom, there are probably a couple different interpretations in the heads of the listeners, right? One of them is that this is kind of like a roast of the mistress, that's calling her ugly, and you don't have these vibrant, characteristics of youth. You don't have these fantastical attributes to your physical form, but I love you anyway. And that can seem like a very backhanded compliment. That is a valid interpretation. Another interpretation is this is a poem about accepting people for their flaws, right? You are not perfect. You're not a model. You don't have all these things, but you don't need that for me to love you. That's another interpretation that some people may have gotten. But the third interpretation, and the one that I clearly like the most, is this is a poem about love poetry more than it is a poem about a woman. Let me explain. He says that the eyes of my mistress are nothing like the sun. Now, I've been in love before. Some of you may have been in love before. You have to acknowledge that you've always been able to make eye contact without burning your retinas, that the light of the sun is so brilliant that you cannot look at it, and that people's eyes are nothing like that. That, yeah, lips are red, but coral is always more red. Yeah, white people can have fair skin, but snow is white. Like, of course, perfume smells better than anybody's breath. I mean, your breath can smell nice if you take care of yourself, but it never smells as good as a rose, or it never smells as good as perfume or as fragrances that are, designed to be very, very pleasing to take in. It's silly to say that it is. So it's not bad to say there are perfumes that smell better than someone's breath, because that's always the case. He's saying that these things are not realistic. These things are false compares. These things are falsehoods that we give people. The things like the moonlight is in your smile and your hair flows like an ocean. These are lines you can feed to anyone. I don't need to falsely compare you to these landscapes or these plants or these flowers for you to be beautiful to me, for you to be beautiful at all. You can be beautiful without this clearly fantastical description of a human being. As a lover of poetry, I have to admit that my least favorite genre of poetry is mushy love poems. Now, not love poems, mushy love poems. And this seems like a very championing piece about how mush love means nothing, that these compliments are hollow. This is just the interpretation that gives me the most energy. So now that we've diced it up, let's run it one time through. And I genuinely want in the comments your interpretation of this poem, please. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes there is more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I never saw a goddess go, my mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. Thank you so much for watching. I had a lot of fun on this. Please tell me what you think below, and go check out those Daniel Radcliffe and Alan Rickman ones. Tell me which one you like better, because I have very strong opinions about those. Click around my face for more videos, and please join my Patreon, patreon.com/tcppoetry. If you really like what you see here, the more support I have on that, the more videos you get, and the better they are. Oh, turn up top! Good night. Hold on.